country into on ideological lines. I mean, there is a large section of Indian population which are in support of the farmers, but at the same time, a much larger section of the population are with the BJP just because they support the ideological backings of the current regime. So the country has been divided on two different lines. So that's something that's really worrying.
Yes. Now, we've seen over the years, and we see it in many countries, we see it with many governments, and we question the fact that in whose interests are these governments acting, in whose interests are they passing laws and legislation. And now this farmer strike is a clear example in terms of laws that are obviously being made to assist big business in the interest of big business, where you talk of millions and upon millions of people. At the end of the day, it is at their expense. And this is what, in essence, this farmers' strike is all about.
Absolutely. I mean, the government has passed three different laws. The one is the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement, or Price Assurance Farm Services Act. That's the name of the bill. Now, this provides farmers a free hand to have what we call as contract farming. Under this, the farmers can produce crops as per contracts with corporate investors for a mutually agreed remuneration. Now, the contention of the farmers against this particular bill is that this binds them to unfavorable contracts, which is drafted by big corporate law firms. And given that a large section of the farmers, have little or no education, they feel that they will be under liability because of these contracts that which is beyond their understanding, and they would not have legal recourse to fight it in case something goes wrong. So that is one thing. The second thing is the Farmers Produce and Trade Commerce Act. According to this law, the government is giving a free hand to the farmers, telling that they can sell the produce that they make outside the agricultural market, which is designated by the government. So far, when a farmer produces something, he goes and sells it in the market committees, and the market committee would fix a price. Now the government wants to take away these market committees and bring in big corporate investors. Now, what the contention of the farmers against this is that this would give free rein to the corporates again to fix prices, which is beyond the farmers' control. And also, one of the very interesting things about this is something called MSP, or the minimum minimum support prices, which was fixed by the government. According to this, the Food Corporation of India would buy a guaranteed, a certain, amount of grain from these corporations every year, which would then subsidize to the poor, below poverty line people in the country. Now, this would guarantee that the farmers produce, a large quantity of the produce is being sold. There was a guarantee that the produce that they are making is actually sold. But now, with the government removing this, there is no guarantee that the produce that the farmers is making will actually be sold in the market. So this is one of the biggest contention that the farmers have. And along with this, the government has also introduced the electricity bill, which the farmers, a new electricity bill, which would tax the farmers, not just the farmers across India. The taxation on the consumption of electricity would be high, which again the farmers thinks is against, which would be a big hurdle for them and would be a big loss for them. So these are some of the issues that the farmers are telling, and the government, despite the farmers been protesting since December, the government is in no mode of budging at all. Although a couple of people have been died as well in the protests.
Well, it's clear at this point in time that there is a deadlock as far as the protesters are concerned, and the government also not budging. But also, I think one needs to take this thing one step further, considering that India has got a huge agricultural export economy, where Indian products are going through right across the entire world. And it is in the interest of the corporates in terms of the export market, and particularly where farmers are at a disadvantage from a pricing perspective, again, buying their products cheaply, but exporting at a higher price. So yeah, again, when one looks at the economic benefit to the corporates, it's going to be huge. It's going to be massive.
That's correct. That is one of the points that the government is making as well. I was talking to you about the MSP, the minimum support prices, where according to the government buys a large number of crops from the farmers from these markets at a very cheap price. And for many governments, consecutive governments for the past 60, 70 years, the government, one of the contention that they have is that this is unsustainable to the economy. But this somehow supports the farmers, and the government then has to subsidize for the loss that some of these government agencies have been suffering. So this, according to to the government, is unsustainable, and the only way to make this sustainable is by removing the minimum support prices, and for which is a death knell for the farmers, because they would not have any guarantee that their produce will be sold. The government has its points that it's unsustainable for the economy. At the same time, I mean, this is what's been going on for decades, and the farmers are relentless. They do not want this to go away.
Well, what is of concern, obviously, is the accompanied brutality as far as these protests are concerned. And as you mentioned, a number of people have actually died. And when one looks at even the issue of suicides among farmers, you have been disadvantaged. And, for me, I was in India 2 days after the decision to demonetize had taken place. And I recall the chaos that it had caused in India at that point in time, and particularly from the farming community when demonetization had taken place. So they took a huge knock at that point in time, because India being a largely cash society, for want of a better term, until demonetization had taken place. So that was a blow that the farmers had taken on the chin. And now we've got this added problem that is with regard to all these laws that are being passed.
That's correct. I mean, one statistics which was done in 2019 says that over 10,000 people committed suicide. I mean, 10,000 farmers committed suicide in 2019 alone, which is 7.4% of all the suicides that was committed in India. So the farmer suicide has been, one of the major issues concerning farmers ever since India's independence. And when you bring in laws such as this, which is again detrimental to the farmers, there's a growing animosity within the farmers that farmers are committing suicide, and there is no policy to address that. At the same time, there's more the new policies that the government is coming is more detrimental, is forcing farmers to towards taking this extreme step. And of course, you rightly mentioned the demonetization as well. Not just the farming community, but the entire middle scale economy and small and middle scale businesses have been washed out because of demonetization. And following demonetization, we also had a new taxation policy which the government brought in, which is called the GST, which was a death knell for the entire for small businesses. So over the years, ever since the new government has been coming, the policies have been favorable towards the corporate, but the low income sections of India, the farmer community, and the poor community, they have taken a huge hit ever since 2014.
Yes. Now, what we've also seen is these protests have obviously gone, to an extent where there is international attention that is now given to this farmers' protest, and it is big news. The entire world is starting to talk about it. But looking at India, looking at the Indian government, particularly reacting to international reaction to these protests, it does appear at this point in time that India or the administration couldn't care less what the international community thinks.
The current regime doesn't, obviously it does cares about what the international community thinks. I mean, it doesn't want the international community to interfere in any of its policies. Before the farmers' protest happened, we had the citizenship amendment protest that erupted across India, which was basically Muslims protesting against this bill, which basically denied them citizenship. There was a huge international hue and cry against it, but the government did not budge. And then we have this. I mean, of course, a lot of celebrities in Hollywood and across the world, people have been speaking against this. And ever since the protests have occurred in India, what the argument that the government has is that the farmers are poor, they are uneducated, they do not understand what the bill is. And in connivance, the media has been branding the farmers as Khalistani terrorists. One thing we need to understand, as a large section of the farmers who are protesting are from the state of Punjab and Haryana. And Punjab and Haryana, the farmers belong to the Sikh community, and not like the rest of the India, where it's the Hindu community. The Sikhs in Punjab in the 1980s, there was this huge movement in some sections of the Sikh which wanted a separate country for itself. It was called the Khalistani movement, and it was brutally suppressed. A large section of Sikhs were killed. There was a genocide that took place in 1984 against the Sikh community in the capital of Delhi. So now that is something that has been brought back by the media. All the farmers, all the Sikh farmers especially, have been branded as Khalistani terrorists, and they have been portraying this entire farmer protest as as a conspiracy by the Sikh Khalistanis to tarnish the image of India internationally. So that's how these protests have been branded. And unfortunately, a large section of Indian society, like I mentioned earlier in my talk, a large section of Indian society are with the regime in this. Because they support the government. The government is a majoritarian government, so there's a huge support for the government in this, because the entire protest has been divided on religious lines. So you have so the way it's been portrayed is this: the country is a Hindu majority country, and then we have these farmers who are Sikhs who are protesting and tarnishing the image of the country. And before this, if you look at the Citizenship Amendment Act protest that was erupted, that was largely led by the Muslim community. So that was actually portrayed as Muslims tarnishing the image of the country. So you have a country today in India where any protest, any form of dissent, has been portrayed as an act of terrorism, which is against the country. A large section of farmers, a large section of Muslims, a large section of liberals who have been protesting in one way for one thing or the other have been branded as terrorists. They've been arrested for sedition, which is a war against the country, and they've been languishing in prisons for over 1 or 2 years now. So this is exactly what's been happening in the country.
Well, I must say a very, very interesting analysis and an interesting take on this. And this is obviously, there's a bigger picture to what you have described by Shaik Zakeer Hussain. But for now, we thank you. We say Jazakallah to you for your time with us here on Salam Media. And we hope to be talking a lot more in the future. But for now, we wish you all the best, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much for having me.
Shaik Zakeer Hussain joining us this morning, and the Cognate, which is a digital news platform of Indian Muslim news, ideas, culture, and business. And you can check out their articles, their videos, their podcasts. Their website is thecognate.com. Very, very interesting analysis indeed. The time is headed straight for 8:47 a.m. We come back and we're talking about the media acting against rogues, and what had actually come out of the Zondo Commission.